Hospital Porter's pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV. Welcome to this UFO Disclosure 2019. The pace quickens. So what do I mean by the pace quickening? Well, as I said in the previous video in this series, link in the description box of course, I felt quite confident about 2019. Now 2018, as you'll recall, was a bit of a damp squib. It of course held a lot of promise to begin with, following the December 2017 revelations about ATIP and To the Stars Academy, and I thought, wow, 2018 is the year. This is the year where things are really going to take off. But as I explained, 2018 was a bit of a doldrums. In fact, everything stagnated, I'd say, through 2018. TTSA kept going. They published the occasional thing, sent lots of merch emails and things like that, but they didn't actually do an awful lot, I felt. However, that's all changed now. 2019, as I said in the last video, has the potential to be enormously exciting in the field of disclosure and the UFO phenomenon and the ET acknowledgement that there is an ET presence engaging the human race. And well, we're almost halfway through the year now, and I'll tell you what, it's not disappointed at all. Now, of course, one of the things I'd like to talk about, of course, is Project Blue Book. Now, Project Blue Book, the TV series I'm talking about now, I have watched all of it now since the last video in the series. I did actually a review of episodes 1. I think I did a live stream about episodes 1 to 3, then another video about episodes 3 to 6. Since then, I've watched the last 4 episodes. That's last 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That's the last few episodes, and the series now has run its course. It's had a TV run on UK television as well, but not the UK History Channel, but the Sci-Fi, SYFY, which is a British channel, which of course has sci-fi on it. And it's now come to an end. I think we're on close to the last episode. I'm not going to talk in detail about Project Blue Book in this particular video, because there's an awful lot to say and it will require its own video, and that is coming soon. I will do an entire review of that particular series from start to finish, and I'll tell you what I think the implications are of this incredible program. I really do. But I'm interviewing a guy who helped work on the series on Hapanwo Radio, not Hapanwo TV, Hapanwo Radio, and that's going to be next Thursday. That's the 30th. So do check that out. Interesting guy called Dave Altman. He sometimes comments on these videos, so check that out. But I'm going to do another video after that, probably, about Project Blue Book, the TV series. So there's an awful lot been going on, and I mean, I'm going to go through some of the new revelations, but it does feel like there's some potential here. It does feel like the pace is quickening. That's what I mean by the pace quickens. It was plodding along all through 2018, just not knowing where it wanted to go, going in circles, thinking, where am I going to go here, am I going to go now, I'm going to stop completely. In 2019, it suddenly jumped to its feet, and it's walking very decisively and very quickly in a particular direction. Where the direction will go, I don't know yet, but I'll say some more in a minute. So let's catch up on the latest UFO disclosure and exopolitical news. Well, about a month ago, it was the 6th anniversary of the citizen hearing on disclosure. Now, if you remember this, I covered it extensively, and I was quite enthralled by it. It was a whole week. It was they hired the big ballroom at the National Press Club, and they hired a panel of 6 former members of the US Congress, these government officials, and they basically went through a mock, privately organised and privately funded citizen hearing. So this was like the congressional hearing. So it was very similar to the one that they had in 1968, which was the last one. Only this, of course, had lots of updates and had lots of witnesses who weren't around at the time. And it's caused an awful lot of attention. I think it was the biggest ufological thing that happens since the May 2001 Disclosure Project press conference, which was another major milestone. And I remember actually, because I was lucky enough to be well, obviously in 2013 I was out of hospital portering, so I was off shift work, and because of the time difference between Washington DC and Oxford in England, where I live, it was just perfect timing for me to get home from work. I'd put on the log in online, and suddenly I'd find I usually started about 2 hours before I finished work. So I'd miss only the first bit, and I could watch it all evening, and it would usually finish about sort of 9 at night. And I did that non-stop throughout the whole citizen hearing. I was absolutely enthralled by it all, and it was really amazing. Peter Robbins, Nick Pope, of course, Dr. Stephen Greer, Stephen Bassett. He was one of the organisers, along with Grant Cameron. And it's interesting looking at I did several Panwo radio shows about the citizen hearing, and I interviewed some of the witnesses as well. It was really remarkable to see that the former Congress people, they were all won over, and this is often the case with UFOs and other similar subjects. Very often, when you get people to look at the information, it will win them over. The information is there, the evidence is there. What stops it happening, the impediment, is the disinformation and the distraction and the subversion and suppression through the mainstream media and its various tactics, including the psychology of mass culture and things like that. But they all did. I mean, they were all. We got to know them quite well as individuals. They were quite some characters. Some of them I liked more than others, and that is the Congress people. But they were pretty interesting characters, I remember, and they were all paid. They were all paid for their time and everything. It was all professional. So it was essentially a facsimile of a real congressional hearing. And of course, what happened after that was Steve then took all the footage, which is amazing. Like I said, it was streamed live online. I watched most of it myself live, and Steve arranged for it all to be produced on a DVD, which you can buy. Actually, you can get a copy of it. I haven't got a copy of that. I really should get one, actually. It wouldn't be the same as watching it live, though, was it? And he sent the DVD to all the members of Congress, the 435 people in the House of Representatives, and the 100 senators. They have a bicameral system in the United States, similar to Great Britain. So 535 voting and 6 non-voting members all received a copy of this particular DVD, and this was followed up by Steve's own lobbying campaign, which he did. So he was in Washington, living in the back of his van, as you might have seen that little mini documentary I told you about in previous episodes of this series. And he was out there doing his stuff, lobbying, spending all his time going in, having meetings with people, everything like that. The plan of action, as he said, was that during the 2016 presidential campaign, that is starting in 2015 and going through to 2016. He focused on the Clinton campaign for several reasons. Firstly, that Clinton's that is Hillary and Bill Clinton's connections to Lawrence Rockefeller, and this was part of what was known as the Rockefeller Initiative, which Steve has talked about previously, which he'd been working on for some time, and the interesting connection with John Podesta. And I know he's a very controversial character in the world of politics at the moment. But the point of the matter is, I don't believe all the stuff that was said about him. Quite frankly, I think there was a lot of nonsense talks about this guy, and some of it I didn't question enough at the time, and I should have done. But he said several things. Like, first, he tweeted, "My biggest failure of 2014. Once again, not securing the disclosure of UFO files. Hashtag the truth is still out here." This was his tweet, which is an interesting thing to say for this guy to say. It really was. It's like he'd been working on the roadmap in the Middle East, for the Palestine-Israel conflict, and he couldn't get that to work and things like that. But no, his biggest regret, because he was actually on the staff of President Obama. So he was actually I think it was it the National Security Team or something for President Obama, or was he the White House Press Secretary? I can't remember what his actual role was in President Obama's cabinet. But let's have a look. He was counselor. He was the figure of a counselor. Thank goodness for the pause button and Wikipedia. He was the counselor to President Obama, which is it's a job currently being done by Kellyanne Conway. He was the one to President Obama, and which basically he's some assistant, which goes right back to the beginning of the 20th century in his particular role. And he was also the White House Chief of Staff to President Bill Clinton before Obama. And then he went on to lead the 2016 Hillary Clinton presidential campaign. So that was quite something. So this is a very, very high-level guy, very, very powerful individual in the political world of the United States, tweeting about how he said he's made several statements about UFOs, saying we need disclosure because it's the right thing to do and it's got to be done. The people have a right to know, etc. So you've got to ask the question, as Steve does, why is that? It was very, very interesting. So Steve focused on the Clinton campaign, as you remember, like that. But of course, that's when we have this. What happened was that led to the situation, of course, where President Trump won. And for Steve and Grant Cameron and several other people, this was an absolute disaster. And Steve was very upset by this. Whereas, as you know, I've gone into this in previous videos in this series, I think his pessimism is misplaced. And I think he is wrong to discredit President Trump the way he does. I respect Steve. I've got a lot in common with him, but this is one of the things I definitely disagree with him on. But I've talked about that previously, so you can go. There's more detail on that in previous videos in this series. I think one of the ones I did in after the election. So check those out. In fact, I won't put a link in the description box because otherwise the description box will be full of links. It'll be like a dictionary of links. But it's called UFO Disclosure 2016 or 2017. What about Trump? It actually is called What About Trump. And there's several other times where I go into this business which Steve talks about, where he almost crashes out the entire process, and that's when he starts going abroad when Trump gets elected. Whereas I personally think under the Trump administration we have a better chance of disclosure than we would have done under the Clinton administration, for reasons I explain. And in fact, this year, as I'll explain, could be proof of that. And so here's a new project that's been launched by the Paradigm Research Group called Academics for Disclosure, AED. As in after disclosure too. It has this lovely sort of like a classical facade here, and the motto of the PRG, it's no longer about lights in the sky, it's about lies on the ground. And this is a interesting thing here, because it says for 7 decades a key component of the success of the government imposed truth embargo has been the refusal by academic institutions in the United States to challenge that embargo and engage the mounting evidence for an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. It's not a stretch to label this the greatest intellectual failure in history. Well, that's absolutely true, Steve. Definitely, Steve. But it's not just the United States, it's the whole world. It's the entire, basic culture of the Western Hemisphere we're talking about here. And it goes on to talk a bit more about how there's been no university-based research. There's been on-campus lectures by experts in the field of the extraterrestrial phenomenon, but they were rare, as were any comments by the faculty on the subject. This is for 70 years. That's been the status. It's total abnegation of intellectual inquiry, it says here. And this is likely to include, this is a key point, a growing dependence on government research funding. Well, yeah. That's exactly it. This is how they maintain consensus of falsehood. And it's in lots of other things. It could be in, like I said, in the climate crisis. It could be to do with cancer and treatment of cancer and things like that. The whole list of things. This counts. Do you remember what I said? Remember my work on the? Do you remember what was it called? Not the Zimbardo experiment, the Milgram experiment. And it says here, fear of losing respect for one peers losing respect of peers or even one's job. Direct intimidation by government agencies, and there's simple cowardice. Well, of course, remember Dr. John Mack, abduction researcher, psychologist at Harvard, tenured professor, the way he was treated. This is it. I mean, Mack was rare because he was not a coward. It's sad when you realise that courage is so rare in this world, but he was one of the few people who stood up to it. The thing is, if Dr. John Mack stood up to them and said, yes, this is real, how many didn't? So, and as I said just previously, if you just present people with the facts, it's amazing how quickly they come around, just in a free intellectual environment, which is what the citizen hearing was. It's amazing how they come round. So it says here, the concept behind academics for disclosure will be announced. What is it? PRG will be seeking aid from a select group of people that includes anyone with an accredited PhD in any subject who's teaching at a college or university, regardless of their degree, to publicly sign the following statement. Quote, I am convinced there is an extraterrestrial presence currently engaging the human race and fully support formal confirmation of this fact by the President of the United States. Nothing else will be asked of the participants except speaking this basic truth to power. Well, you know, good luck, Steve, with that. And also, if there are any people with PhDs, and thank goodness this is something that doesn't affect me. Yes, I can sit on the subs bench of this one and let other people kick the ball. I just hope there are many people who will do that, who are educated and working in the working within their field. I hope they will. I hope that they will actually be willing to do that. And Steve says quite clearly here, in the coming weeks and months, PRG will recruit academics. No names will be published until such time as there is a significant number of persons signed up. That's a very important point there that is included here, because I think confidence will grow when there's a weight of numbers. I mean, this is always the way, isn't it? I mean, like in any strike or in any piece of industrial action or any other kind of protest, they can take people out in small numbers, but they can't jail everyone. I think it was Mahatma Gandhi, when he was in jail, he said, "I'm the only one at the moment. This is why they've jailed me. But how are they going to jail all 400 million people in India?" This is how it works. So it's a really, really great. It looks really, really interesting, this, and I do wish Steve Bassett and all the other people behind Academics for Disclosure good luck. And if you are an academic, please contact the Paradigm Research Group and sign up. This is exciting, isn't it? Right, love, here's a video well worth watching, actually. It's called Beyond the Spectrum. This is really, really cool, actually. It's actually a pretty good one. Beyond the Spectrum, what has NASA been hiding from us beyond the visual spectrum? And this is meaning UFOs that may not be visible to the naked eye, but can be seen in other wavelengths. Now, Nick Hayes, of course, is an obvious person who talks about this, and I did mention this to the director. Now, the director of this film is a guy called Darcy Weir, who's a friend of mine. I've interviewed him on Hapanwo Radio. I'm not going to put a link in the description box. Go to the Hapanwo Radio blog, hapanwo-radio.blogspot.co.uk, and find it. But I did an interview with him about this. It's got some very interesting interviews and testimony. Dr. Andrew Jacobs, David Sarita, Dr. Jack Kasher, and Gary McKinnon. A very, very interesting bunch of people. And yeah, if you're into these kinds of subjects and into the UFO phenomenon, I think you'll like this. Also, Darcy has done a follow-up called Beyond the Spectrum Being Taken, which is about alien abduction, which is co-directed with a guy called Lee Lustig, who is... I've also interviewed him. They're both of them together on the Hapanwo Show and Hapanwo Radio. I think these films, they could well be heralds of the new age, if what I'm thinking is happening in the world actually happens. And I know it's a rather cheesy expression, but I think it's an accurate one. So time will tell, but it'd be worth watching these as kind of almost instructions for what is to come in this universe and on this planet. I think these videos could well be hot property. Now, if you want to watch it, you can get it on Amazon and several other platforms. I personally watched it on Amazon. It's quite cheap, only a couple of quid. I reckon well worth it. Do please check that out. Right, now this is interesting, very interesting indeed. We have here a copy of the Times. This is the London Times, Saturday, April the 27th, 2019. Let me just zoom in there so you can see the date. Oh no, I'll hold it up closer. Actually, it's easier if I just do that. I'll hold it closer there so you can see the date. Saturday, April 27th, 2019. It's the Times. Now, this is no need for passport to see through. Goes high tech. Very interesting. Now, this is from a few weeks ago, obviously, but someone suggested I buy this because this one is essentially very, very interesting. More interesting than Times usually is. Now, I must say I'm not a Times reader as such. Actually, I think this might be easier without the tripod. Let's just see how it goes. Right, yeah, I'm not a Times reader as such. There we are. But I thought I would read it this time. I would definitely read it this time because Apparently there is something particularly historic about this paper. I'll probably end up keeping it, actually. Just have a look. So it looks pretty normal. At the time, it's the Saturday one, it's the weekend supplements and everything, so it is particularly big and bulky. Do people actually have time to get to read all this? And look at it. Okay, my goodness, I don't actually read a newspaper regularly. I never have. Unless you count Nexus as a magazine, not a newspaper. Right, here we go. Confessions of an NHS midwife, needy dads, older mums and blunt scissors. Oh my goodness me. Well, again, this is quite apt because you've had plenty of confessions of an NHS porter, haven't you? £2 this was. It's quite cheap. So what we got over here? Northern Ireland power sharing. Invitation to Trump. Dinner puts Corbyn off his food. Oh, there's the God Emperor. Look forward to seeing him. What's over here? Love-hate relationship. Online. A lighthouse. Obviously, that is a lighthouse, not a UFO. NHS waiting times. Get yourself a new watch. And oh my goodness. Bottoms. See, in the sun they have breasts. In the times they have bottoms. Fence. Oh, what's it going here? More gossip and stuff like that. Something to do with Europe and the MP. Go on there. Notre Dame. Things like that. Game of Thrones, of course. You can't stop talking about Game of Thrones, haven't you? I've never bloody watched it. Never seen it. Never seen it in my life. Please grooming. Inaccurate trackers for the marathon. Alright, all kinds of what's here? Something to do with marathons. Gas boilers. Network rail. Ferry giant. Lorry drivers. Customers reveal the worst insurers. We're not just climate pupils. Aliens are already here and breeding with us, as Oxford lecturer judge activist. What? What was that? Aliens are already here and breeding with us, says Oxford lecturer. It's on page 19 of the Times, Saturday, April the 27th, 2019. This is a story by Nicola Woolcock. And it is by here, this Young Hai Chi has already written a book on alien hybrids who walk among us. I know this guy. I've met him. He was at the first Amash conference in Nottingham. That's when I met him. My goodness me. What's going on? Okay, let's have a look here a moment. Right, okay, I've got to read this. So he's now in the Times. Asking how aliens would combat climate change sounds like a fittingly left field question for an Oxbridge admissions interview. Is it right? It is one that sixth formers will not have to tackle, however, as it has already been answered by a lecturer at Oxford who says aliens share our biosphere and intend to colonise the Earth. Is this really the Times? Yes, it is. Okay. Now, it's funny that they bring up sixth formers in school because there's a lot of weird things going on at school relating to this, and it's I often ask myself what's going on. The UFO crash retrievals and stuff that the little primary school kids have been subjected to. I think I covered that on a previous video. But anyway, they are interbreeding with humans to create a new hybrid species that will save the planet from annihilation by climate change, according to Young Hai Chi, an instructor in Korean at Oxford Oriental Institute. These hybrids may be walking unobserved, where are we, among us, he said in a lecture several years ago. That might be the Amash one, actually. He's now written a book on the subject. I've got to get that book. Well, I'm not the only weirdo in Oxford, see? Dr. Chi has tried to debate his subject at the Oxford Union, but his proposal was rejected last year. Oh, so much for free speech, Oxford Union. Yeah, you had David Icahn, you had Tommy Robinson, but you won't have Dr. Chi, Dr. Young Hai Chi, no. Where are we now? He believes in a strong correlation between climate change and alien abductions. This is the Oxford Student newspaper reported. His lecture, Alien Abduction and the Environmental Crisis, outlined his theory concerning the presence of aliens on Earth. I think it might be the lecture he actually gave at Amash, which I've seen. He cited an abduction researcher in the US who argued that aliens' primary purpose is to colonise the planet by interbreeding with humans to produce a hybrid species. Who's that? I wonder who that is. There's loads of people in America who are like that. Dr. Chi said, it was not only scientists and theologians, but also non-human species who appear to be greatly concerned about the survivability of the human species. That's true, actually. This is a recurring feature of alien contactees. That they often come up with this. They often say things like, "Oh, this goes back to the beginning of the history of alien abduction research." They say things like, "We're concerned about you humans, about your behaviour, to do with environmental destruction and also war and stuff like that." I mean, you know my opinion on climate change. You watch my Extinction Rebellion video, but as I point out in that video, a lot of the concerns that environmentalists raise are very real. For example, the poisoning of the biosphere with emissions from petroleum and from coal, which I happen to believe carbon dioxide is not the problem one, but there's lots of other chemicals they put into the air, into the soil, into the water that gets into our bodies. There's all kinds of other chemicals that are released. There's leaks from nuclear power stations. There is plastic litter in the oceans, which is killing off turtles and other sea life. Topsoil erosion, deforestation, the expansion of deserts. These are real dangers that could destroy the Earth as surely as climate change would if these carbon things were real. The carbon emissions problem was real. So there are real threats caused by human activity to the Earth. And please watch my video on the Extinction Rebellion for more details on that. The timing of the aliens' appearance coincides with the Earth facing significant problems, climate change and nuclear weapons in particular. Yeah, that is what a lot of contactees say, that the aliens told them this. And he concluded, it may be more or less assumed that the hybrid project is a response to this pending demise of human civilization. It could be that's true. That, in a sense, the aliens are here to save us. I mean, this is something that Mary Rodwell's talked about. She has a different spin on it. She deals with children primarily, or ET contactees, primarily children, who have had contact with aliens who say they want to help humanity. They want to help us, stop us destroying ourselves through war and environmental destruction, and bring us onto the path of a more, they basically create a higher civilization through spiritual education. Acting now on climate change would have the double advantage not only of saving the world, but proving aliens wrong in their low estimation of humans' moral capacity, he said. Well, that's true, isn't it? We would be sort of like saying to the aliens, well, thanks for the help, guys, but we can sort ourselves out here. And that would then maybe make them think more of us and maybe more likely to reveal themselves to us fully. But yeah, I mean, the thing about it is, though, if we can't say, to save the Earth, we have to change this agenda. We have to stop this agenda for the New World Order and create a free world, as I've often said. His book, written in Korean, is called Alien Visitations and the End of Humanity. Well, are we going to see it in English? I hope so. I hope it's going to be translated. I can't speak Korean, unfortunately. Apparently, a thing about Korean language is it's actually an isolate language. It's like Basque. When you hear people speaking Korean, it sounds like Chinese or Japanese, but it is an isolate language. It's completely unique, like the Basque language in Pyrenees Mountains. Dr. Chi has identified 4 types of aliens: small, tall and bold, scaly with snake eyes and insect-like. Well, there's far more than that. I mean, there's a virtual taxonomy of these creatures, and there's hundreds of different species have been identified, but the ones he talks about here are the scaly ones, insect-like ones are very common. The insect aliens appear to give orders to the lower ranks. Is something like the Greys. They exist within a comprehensive biosystem we cannot experience because our perception is limited by our organs, he said. Now that sounds to me like channel normal, as Graham Hancock calls it. We have like this we have this ability to see using our senses, but our consciousness is fixed on the normal problem-solving level of intelligence, as he says. And he says that many people, traditional cultures throughout the world, have learned ways of expanding that channel to other areas through the use of ayahuasca and other drugs, and through shamanic trance dancing and things like that. People abducted by aliens have reported that the hybrids were of very high intelligence, so he posited that they could be the problem solvers and leaders of the future. That would be great. I mean, this is what Mary Wadwell talks about, like the kids, her kids, like the children, the star children. And she's got a new book called The New Human, which I've not read yet, but I've read her first book. And she says that the aliens are sort of like they're almost educating these people. They're putting in these creatures which are half human and have alien origins, but also have an alien mental attitude to basically become people who other humans, like natural earthling humans, can look up to actually to lead the earth onto a new path, a more healthy future. He said, so they come not for the sake of us, but for the sake of them, their survival. But their survival and actually our survival as well. So we are intertwined, yeah. The survival of the entire biosphere. I think what he means here is because they are already here on Earth, so in a sense they're a part of the Earth's experience. Dr. Cheese said he was still looking for more evidence to support my view. Well, good luck to him, mate. I'll help him any way I can. But I know he's working closely with Miles Johnston and with other people at the Basis Project, and good luck to him. Oxford and Cambridge are renowned for their bizarre interview questions designed to make candidates think laterally and imaginatively. I mean, I've obviously never applied for a scholarship at either place, but that's interesting. Yeah, one such question said to have been asked of applicants to English degrees in recent years was, describe a cucumber to an alien. Describe a cucumber to an alien. It's a good question. You have to say it's a kind of vegetable. It's a kind of like a not a root vegetable, like a leguminous vegetable, which is very watery and moist, covered in green. You can eat it, but it tastes nicer with other things. You can put it on your eyes if you want to reduce the wrinkles in beauty salons and things like that. It's a good question, isn't it? Potential archaeology students have repeatedly been asked, how would you explain human culture to an alien visiting the Earth? And I know someone who was actually an archaeologist, so I'll have to ask her whoever she was asked this question. How would you describe human culture to an alien visiting the Earth? It's crap! we kill each other and we treat each other like dirt, and we have no interest. Most people have no interest in anything outside their regular material needs. We are, what was it Charles said? Hamburgers with legs. Hamburgers with legs. That's interesting, isn't it? Well, you know what? I think Dr. Young-Hai Chi, this is a guy I think Stephen Bassett needs to get onto that Academics for Disclosure thing. He really, I mean, I bet you Young-Hai Chi will be willing to do that. I shall actually have to ask him. I have actually got in touch with him, and I'm in communication since I first read this, so I will actually suggest that to him. And all I can say is, this guy, he takes guts to do this, it really does. So I take my hat off to you, Dr. Chi. Well done for your bravery in actually daring to speak out about this to the point where it's in the bloody Times. That is the primary newspaper of record here in the United Kingdom. And that is quite something. And that, again, it's an indication of where things are going. Now, I'm going to keep this, actually. I was going to throw it away once I made this video, but I'm going to keep this. This could be a very important historical document.
Now, this here is interesting, not least because of, I think, Richard Dolan's response to it, which I'll probably go into later. But it was announced a short while ago, just a few weeks ago, and this is here is a page from the History Channel, which of course is very into UFOs at the moment because of Project Blue Book, the TV show. Reporting UFO sightings to the US Navy just got easier. The Navy is formalising its process for reporting unexplained aerial phenomena, which is pretty good. And again, it's back in the 1950s. If you saw an unidentified flying object, you could fill out one of the US Air Force's handy UFO questionnaires for Project Blue Book. That's the real one, not the TV series. This program was dissolved in 1969, but the military has remained interested in UFOs ever since. Yes, although they denied it, of course. They denied it. Even you remember the. Do you remember they had no formal? They claimed in the famous UFO Disclosure Petition 2 that they had no formal investigation at all into UFOs, none at all, until, well, it's all come out in the last couple of years, hasn't it? But the US Navy is updating its guidelines for how pilots and personnel should report what it calls unexplained aerial phenomena, UAP. They don't use the word UFO, of course. Why would they? But there's been a number, of course, they say there's been a number of reports of unauthorized and or unidentified aircraft entering various military-controlled ranges and designated airspace. For instance, the Nimitz incident, but of course that's not the only one. The Navy wants to create a formal process for pilots and other personnel to report flying objects they can't explain. The Navy seems less concerned that UAPs are a sign of alien life and more concerned they're unauthorized aircraft in foreign nations. Well, that's what we thought, but it turns out that's actually probably not the case. For reasons I'll explain shortly. Now, there are several people who said about this, because when I sort of mentioned it on social media, someone said, Ben, there's nothing to see here, move along, just read the text. It's not talking about aliens, it's just another way of them reporting unidentified aircraft. But I don't think, it turns out later that's not entirely the case, as you will find out, because there's a lot more to this story that have come out more recently. Now, this is the latest video by UFO Jesus at the time of recording, and it's got a very alarming title: UFO invasions will force disclosure. But he actually talks about some of the points that I've been making here, and will make again in a minute, and he refers to several media spots that have been very, very interesting in the last couple of days, including some by members of the To the Stars Academy. And he draws me to this article here on a newspaper called The Hill, which is something to do with government, as in the Capitol Hill. It's by Christopher Mellon, who of course is part of TCSA, and it's called Friend, Foe or Unknown Force Flying Overhead. Congress should find out. And it goes into talk about here how since 2015 dozens of Navy F-18 fighters have encountered unidentified aerial phenomena. Right, dozens, that's interesting, isn't it? He says dozens, because of course so far we've only heard about 2. So, now they're talking about dozens. Obviously there's a lot more to come out. I think actually, as I'll explain at the end, this is leading somewhere to probably more revelations. And it says here these UAPs, who were and who was flying them, friends, foes or enemies, remains a mystery. Unknown forces, possibly, he says. He calls them unknown forces. Yet, careful examination of the data inevitably leads to one possible disturbing conclusion: a potential adversary of the United States has mastered technologies we do not yet understand to achieve capabilities we cannot yet match. Well, of course, that is inevitable. It's an inevitable conclusion you have to make if you're involved in the defence business. Indeed, Nick Pope has tweeted something similar lately. I mean, I don't follow him on Twitter anymore, but UFO Jesus talks about this. His name's Ryan, incidentally, and I have given him a shout out before, and his channel is called Post Disclosure World. Do check him out. I think he's very, very good. I think his channel is really good, so do check him out. So, yeah, I mean, a potential adversary, of course, if it is, whether it's extraterrestrial or not, it is a potential adversary. Obviously, it's taken an interest in our defence capabilities. They have occasionally shown hostile intent. They're certainly watching us very closely. They're aware of our presence. We know that. UFOs do know that. The UFOs are aware of us. They seem to be interacting with us in many ways, and they have the capabilities to basically do anything they like with us. They can abduct us, they can mutilate cattle, and they can invade our nuclear defences and things like nuclear bases and things like that, and nuclear weapon storage areas. And we don't know what their intent is, but we certainly know what their capabilities is. And so we have to assume, if you're in the defence business, that their intent may be hostile. So Mellon is saying it's time for Congress to discover the answers to these questions and share some of its conclusions with the public. So again, this is calling for basically what Steve is, a congressional hearing. Now, after the citizen hearing, Steve pushed for this. That's the point of sending out these DVDs, to arrange a full congressional hearing. And he says it's unfortunate, it's impossible to gauge the overall level of UAP activity, since military personnel rarely report their encounters for fear of damage to their careers. Well, again, that's exactly the same as the academics, isn't it? It's they don't want to be labelled loonies, and this is how they maintain secrecy. Now we do have a possibility. We are able to gauge the overall level of UAP activity, though not precisely, but we can gauge the presence, the UFO presence on Earth, how common it is, and what it's doing to a certain extent, but through unofficial sources, that is UFO investigators, the people who do field research and collect witness testimony. That's the thing. So that's basically what Mellon is describing here. And he goes on to urge the Trump administration to provide a report at whatever level of classification seems appropriate. And he mentions the To the Stars Academy, an organisation of former US intelligence and national security experts analysing the UFAP phenomenon. It's placed notional legislative language on its website to facilitate this discussion. Right, and it says, why should Congress act? And it's, of course, basically he's just saying, take it seriously. Take it seriously. And but then he goes on to talk about Russia and China. I mean, of course, are these Russian probes? I mean, of course, the question is, are these Russian or Chinese probes? Are they sort of like drones, but which are running off some kind of anti-gravity free energy propulsion? Well, there's several reasons why I don't go along with that. I've talked about them in previous videos of this series and others, which is because it's to do with their behaviour. It's not only to do with the technology, it's to do with their behaviour. That indicates they are not actually some kind of secret government technology from either United States or other countries. So it gives you a little bio as well in this article. Christopher Mellon, that's Mellon, and now Mellon is a very, I've talked about this before, it's a very aristocratic American name. It's part of the Eastern establishment, which is the nearest they have to sort of like lords and ladies of the manor. But it says he served for 20 years in the federal government and was Deputy Assistant Defense Secretary for Intelligence from 1999 to 2002, and for Security Information Operations from 1998 to 1999. He was a Minority Staff Director of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence under Senator John Rockefeller. Oh, the Rockefellers again. And is National Security Advisor to the Stars Academy on Science and consultant to History's non-fiction series Unidentified inside America's UFO Investigation. Well, let's find out a little bit more about that, shall we? Now, this is very interesting indeed. It's a new series called Unidentified Inside America's UFO Investigation. And this is actually premiering on the 31st of May, the last day of May, which at the time of writing is not long ago. In fact, it's next Friday. Today is Sunday the 26th, so it's barely a week away, 5 days away. And it says here, former Blink 182 guitarist Tom DeLonge details the UFO TV series on the History Channel. This is from Rolling Stone. And this is on the History Channel just after Project Blue Book has finished, was nearly finished on UK TV. And he's going to be executive producer of this new History Channel mini-series about government secret UFO programs. It's a 6-part series on TV. It'll be centered around an interview with Luis Elizondo, former military intelligence official who helmed the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program until it was shuttered in 2012. Elizondo was one of the prime sources in the New York Times 2017 report about ATIP, where he researched and investigated unidentified aerial phenomena after retiring from the Pentagon. So this is interesting, isn't it? Unidentified will feature newly authenticated evidence and footage of UFOs, as well as interviews with eyewitnesses and former military personnel. Per a statement on the show, will expose a series of startling encounters and embark on fascinating new investigations that will urge the public to ask questions and look for answers. And that's really good. Tom DeLonge said in his show, in the interview, with this show, the real conversation can finally begin. I'm thankful to history for giving To the Stars Academy team a world-class scientists, engineers and intelligence experts this opportunity to tell the story in a comprehensive and compelling way. I think everyone that watches the show will walk away with questions answered and a feeling of, wow, I get it now. probably ask a lot of questions as well as answer them. But along with Tom DeLonge and Elizondo, Unidentified will feature other members of the To the Stars Academy. Yeah, Chris Mellon, Hal Puthoff, of course, Jim Simeon, a CIA research officer. And of course, this is... I'm not going to repeat the points I made in the last part of this series, but of course, there's some elements of TTSA, and I think to myself, well, why are these people involved? Hal Puthoff, people like that. Can we trust them? And I think that's a reasonable thing to say. However, I'm not going to do what some researchers within our community do, which is, everything's bent, everything's fixed. Whenever something comes along that appears to challenge Illuminati control, it's just a deeper part of the conspiracy, Ben. And that I've been through that before. I'm not going to go to that level of negativeness and paranoia. So I'm willing to give this a chance. I would be interested to see this series. I really will. I do hope it'll be worth watching. I think it will. As I said, Tom DeLonge is a guy whose sincerity I've never doubted. You'd be interested to listen. If you listen to Hapanwo Radio, you should listen to the show next week. That's the Thursday are coming up, which is Thursday the 30th, because I'm interviewing a chap called Dave Altman, who's someone actually who's commented on a couple of my videos. He was involved in the production of Project Blue Book, and he knows Tom DeLonge, he knows these people, and he's involved in the Unidentified series too. He's like a casting agent and talent agent or something, and he works like that. So please do listen to that show, because we do discuss this series, and we discuss Project Blue Book as well. And Dave's a very interesting character. I enjoyed speaking to him very much, and you'll probably enjoy listening to it. So that's next Thursday, so check that out on Hapanwo Radio. Not TV, radio. Now this is probably the biggest news since the last UFO Disclosure video, which I did on New Year's Day. It's this amazing story that's published by the New York Post, an American newspaper. The Pentagon finally admits it investigates UFOs. And this is really quite astonishing, actually. It's like a confirmation of everything that was said in December 2017 by Luis Elizondo. This is independent confirmation of this revelation. A Department of Defense spokesman told the New York Post that the US government does indeed, or did indeed, have a program to investigate unidentified aerial phenomena from 2007 to 2012, which of course what Elizondo said about ATIP. Now the term, you may have noticed that unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, is an acronym that keeps coming up. UFO is unidentified flying object, is never used in officialdom, and that's because of its connotations in popular culture. And Nick Pope confirmed that the UK Ministry of Defence used the same term as the US DoD for the same reasons, of course because of all the baggage associated with UFO. And again, this is what goes back to what Steve said about the academics. It's public image, peer pressure is an enormous force in human psychology. It really is. And there's a phrase that a man will face an army before the scorn of his peers, and that's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. It's one of the, I think, social rejection, ostracization, is one of the biggest, most awful experiences that a person can face. In fact, there's actually research done that the human brain responds the same way to ostracization as it does to torture. It's very so this again, we're coming back to how these secrets are kept, how it's perfectly possible to cover up UFOs and the ET presence on Earth. Anyway, I'm digressing here. Nick Pope called this a bombshell. Well, Pope is known for his flowery language, which is sometimes misplaced, but in this case he could be correct. Now, there's some talk going round. I mean, that's gone round since December 2017, and indeed even I have contributed to this conversation, which is that we shouldn't perhaps get too excited about the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. It could simply be another scheme for spotting new enemy aircraft. Indeed, that's come up. That's kind of what Christopher Mellon was kind of hinting at and was not willing to go too far from. And that it couldn't be ruled out, as Nick Pope would say. Even though, I must admit, it was quite unlikely. I mean, it was something that I did wonder about. Indeed, I talk about it in the last in the last episode, my New Year episode of my UFO Disclosure series. Now, one of the most outspoken ATIP cold water pourers was, as I explained in the last episode, John Greenwald of the Black Vault. If you ever watched that, it's damn good actually. Go to theblackvault.com and just watch his videos, because he's very good actually. And he was one of the people who dug up a lot of information on ATIP, which made us think that perhaps it wasn't all everything it seems to be. This made me cautious, I must admit. And I spoke about how To the Stars Academy employs Hal Puthoff, this former head of the CIA remote viewing project. And I think to myself, why is this guy getting involved? I mean, it's one of these questions you see these people hanging around, and you think to yourself, well, what are they doing there? This is a person. I mean, maybe people don't have the memory to remember this, and certainly unless you had a specialist interest in the subject, you wouldn't necessarily even know this guy. But he was the man who brought us Uri Geller. He was the guy who recruited Uri Geller to the CIA and Mossad. And it's all come out now about Geller and what he was doing, about how basically his celebrity status as a pop psychic is kind of a cover for what his real job was. But what happens now is this new revelation is kind of like a bit of, it alleviates my misgivings somewhat. I mean, we don't know exactly the whole thing, but this secret government initiative did exist. Christopher Sherwood of the Department of Defense, he's a serving member of the Department of Defense. He acknowledges this, and what's more, he says that the department investigates claimed sightings of alien spacecraft. It says he is always concerned about maintaining positive identification of all aircraft in our operating environment, which is anything that might be a threat to the homeland. It uses the word foreign capability, foreign. But obviously this is something a bit more bigger than that. I mean, as Pope says, previous official statements were ambiguous and left the door open to the possibility that ATIP was simply concerned with next generation aviation threats from aircraft, missiles and drones. But this new admission makes it clear that they really did study what the public would call UFOs. Now, John Greenwald actually is impressed by this too. He's done a little video. I mean, he was actually interviewed by the New York Post, and he himself, who's as I said, he's one of the big sort of like he's one of the most cautious people within this research project. Even he's impressed by this. So where this goes, I mean, this is kind of breaking news. It only came out on Friday, so I've only just heard about this basically. I'm recording on Sunday afternoon, so obviously there could be more to come on this subject. We'll just have to wait and see. But I'll tell you what, this has the potential to go a long way. It really, really does. But how far will it go? I suppose that's the question. I mean, like sometimes when I see news stories like this, I feel we're just so close. We're so close I can almost taste it. And then again, then the other part of my mind kicks in and goes, nah, come on, Ben, it's not going to be as simple as that. So which is right and which is wrong? Oh, well, you know which one I want to be right, and you know there's a lot of wishful thinking here, but which one actually is right? Just because wishful thinking is attached to a certain outcome doesn't mean that outcome is necessarily wrong. So there you have it. There's a lot going on in the world when it comes to ETs and what they're up to. It's now late May. It's the summer coming up, and so what happens next? I don't know. But of course, we've got every reason to think that something is going on. It's as if there is a convergence of these various lines of information and developments within the media towards a certain point. I do think that there is more to be told. I think the ATIP revelations, there may be other organisations and projects within the US government that are similar to ATIP but may still be running at the moment. And I've got a feeling maybe they will be coming out soon. Now, that could be described as disclosure with a small d. Will it lead to disclosure with a big D? It's hard to say. So far, the information that's come out, especially regarding the Nimitz and everything like that, so far, that in itself is not revolutionary. But when you put it together with everything else that's going on, it could lead up to disclosure with a big D.
Now, Richard Dolan has done a video. Richard Dolan's done a very interesting video, and he'd made it about the Navy revelations, which came out, the US Navy revelations about their new reporting system, and this was a couple of weeks back. And of course, as I said, the most recent Pentagon revelations only came out on Friday, so I can't wait to see the video he's going to make about that. It'd be quite something, wouldn't it? He hasn't commented yet, as far as I can see. But one of the first things I'll do when I've edited this video is go and watch and see what Dolan is saying about this. Now, Dolan, I think sometimes suffers from a bit of hubris, because he's actually come to the conclusion that somehow the government can spin the truth, the entire UFO phenomenon, and everything involved, all the implications around it, in a way which won't create what you might call a disclosure explosion. The disclosure explosion is what I mean by, well, I've written about it, of course, in my books. Roswell Rising, Roswell Revealed, and Roswell Redeemed, available at all good bookshops now. But it's basically when the truth comes out about UFOs, if it's suddenly announced, all hell will break loose. There'll be social unrest, or things like that, Gore's civil war, zombies wandering the streets, and God knows what else. Imagine Brexit with no deal, that kind of thing. There's this kind of idea that there'll be some kind of huge, devastating shock throughout, which will ripple through all of human society. And to be honest, yes, I can't see how that can be avoided. I've said many times before about the UFO truth embargo, as Bassett calls it, and about the nature of the cover-up itself. I've said many times about how that simply can't be shunted aside. They can't just slip it in with into Prime Minister's question time. Dolan seems to think they can somehow. He says, he's been studying the media, and he says somehow they're managing to present it. The government and the media have found a way to present this in a way which will make people accept it. And I don't see how, when you get really down to the nitty-gritty, and that is the Roswell events, the crash retrievals, the free energy issue and stuff like that. I think maybe Richard Dolan, maybe he hasn't thought about that, or maybe hasn't included that yet. But the truth that we are being, I think maybe he just means the truth that we are not alone and we're being visited by extraterrestrials, which in itself is an astonishing revelation. But does Dolan understand, and I think he should understand this, that that's just the first domino in the pile? It will lead to far more. It will lead to a huge amount of subsequent questions from almost everybody you can imagine. I had to think about this very carefully while I was writing my books, and which means the government needs to contain this particular subject completely in all angles. I don't think you can just let a little bit of it out. It's a bit like saying I can let a little bit of air out of this balloon with this needle just going like that and poking a hole in it. I'll let some of the air out of this balloon, but the rest of the air will stay in. It's not like that. It'll be simply, oh, we're not alone, there are UFOs, boom! That's what it'll be like. And so I think Dolan's made a mistake here. Now, anyway, of course, as I said, we'll see what he has to say about everything else. But it's kind of like it's kind of interesting about the this whole idea that he's come up with, this whole scheme in his head about how the government are actually trying to tell us in a way that won't make them look bloody awful, and will just discredit them completely. Oh my goodness me! And I mean, it just goes to show. I mean, like I've made many videos about Brexit and about how the government, the panic that has set in over the whole Brexit issue, and how the government literally don't know what to do. It's like the 2016 effect coming back again. It's like the 2019 effect. We may even start to call it that. But do you realise that Brexit is child's play compared to UFOs? It's a stroll in the park. It's footnotes on a parliamentary memo compared to UFO disclosure. Oh my goodness me, may you live in interesting times, and these times are certainly interesting. Anyway, I think what I'll do now is I'll contact Dr. Young High, and I'll ask him if he wants to take part in Steve Bassett's academic thing, because the academics for disclosure, because I think he's the kind of guy who Steve would actually love, and he's had the courage to speak out now. So that's my next step, I think, is to contact him. I'm already in touch with him by email, so that's good. I'll talk to him about that. Now, just one more thing I want to talk about now. There's a link in the description box to an article on Hapanmo Voice. And by the way, if you watch this, you should regularly check the Hapanmo Voice blog, because there's a lot of information. A lot of information you're seeing in this video I've already written about on Hapanmo Voice weeks or months ago. So very often, the first news which comes to me, the first time I hear about something, I'll very often put it on Hapanmo Voice. And I know a lot of you don't. I often get emails from people saying things like, I know a lot of people who read Hapanmo Voice don't watch Hapanmo TV, or Hapanmo Radio, etc., or listen to that, because it's almost like there's different audiences for all these different outputs in this very multimedia service I provide. I remember I had an email from someone after writing a Hapanmo Voice article saying, Ben, are you going to say something about Assange being arrested? And I said, mate, I already have. Check out Hapanmo TV. And I pointed him to my video about Assange. But do check out Hapanmo Voice. Well, there's something on Hapanmo Voice I put up there, because there's actually some new videos that have come out. One of them is called They Can't Keep This Hidden Forever, and it's about disclosure. It's not a video by me, it's a video by the Zohar Entertainment Group. And it's on the UAMN Mysteries UFO Mysteries YouTube channel. There's a link in the description box to the notice I provide on Hapanmo Voice. It's a very good little documentary. It's a short documentary, just a quarter of an hour long, with some really good graphics. It's very well made, excellent production design about the UFO disclosure issue. But the reason I brought this to your attention is because the narration is by me. Now, it's not my voice, you'll know, it's someone else speaking, but I wrote the script. So do check that out. Now, there's a couple more on there by me, actually, which I'm actually just submitted another script for a third video. But do check them out, because I've done one about time travelers as well. So basically, if you go to that channel, you may see several videos that are actually not, they don't feature me, I'm not in them, but the script, the actual narration, is written by me. So check those out. So what happens next? I've got no idea. But I do feel the whole situation is speeding up. It's running faster. As I said, it's turning into a sprint now rather than just a slow plod. Now, whether we'll cross some kind of finish line or whether it will just slow down again, I don't know. But I'm an optimist. I'm always hopeful this might lead somewhere, and it won't necessarily. But I'm not going to I'm not just one of these eternal pessimists that you get all through the truth movement, where nothing ever happens which is good for us. If it looks like it's good for us, it's not really. It's just a deep part of the conspiracy. I'm not one of those people. And I've talked about this several times on other videos, and it annoys me actually when that happens. So I'm actually going to look at this, watch it, hope for the best, and give them a chance. I'm going to give TTSA a chance. Regardless of put off and all that sort of thing, I'm giving them a chance. Same as I do with Brexit. As I said on the last video about Euro election, I'll do the same with Boris Johnson. I give people chances, and I give situations chances to develop, to see where they'll go. And I don't care if any of you say, told you so, Ben, told you so, if it doesn't work out. I'm open to the idea that things won't work out. I'm open to the idea that this is a complete dead end. I understand that. For the reasons I've said many times in this series, I understand the difficulty with the disclosure issue. I've understood very well how it ties in with the whole New World Order, and that it's the absolute last thing that any global elite trying to produce a society which is with greater authoritarianism and internationalism would want. But maybe that society won't happen. Maybe it's not possible. Maybe the forces of freedom are finally fighting back. Maybe the 2016 effect really is the beginning of the end, or the end of the beginning, whichever way you want to look at it. Maybe we are going to see a free world in our lifetimes. There's one thing for certain. The UFO disclosure issue is intimately intertwined with that question. If we're going to see a free world, it'll be a free world with ET disclosure. And a new world order cannot possibly happen without the ET truth embargo. That is an absolute fact, of which I have no doubt. So, what's coming up next? Well, as I said, there's a video coming about Project Blue Book very soon, as soon as I can get around to doing it and fit it in with my other things. And lots of other subjects. I'm ready for lots of other subjects as well. And, well, there'll be more on the Brexit issue, of course. A couple of other issues. I'm planning a couple of trips. I'm doing some live lectures. I've got several videos that I've actually filmed that I haven't had time to upload yet. They're sort of sitting in there. They're raw files just sitting in my system, waiting for me to edit them and upload them. So that's coming up as well. These are old videos and they need to get online so you guys can see them. And I'm very sorry I haven't done it, but there's at least 3 of these videos. I think 4 actually. It's 4 of these videos. But there's only me, just one pair of hands. So, thank you very much all of you for watching Hapanwo TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, stop the New World Order!